This is going to be pretty broad, and we're just going to cover some instances that have happened in history. And I'm not going to make a whole lot of application to this. That'll be your job. You figure out between you and God what applies to you and what doesn't. There's two places in the Bible that give you a genealogy list of David's descendants. They're in two passages, and you're going to need to remember these numbers. They're in chapter 3 and also in chapter 5. Those numbers are going to keep repeating throughout this history. I don't know why it is. This is the first time I noticed it when I went through these things. Let's get to our passage in chapter 3, verse 2. Chapter 3, verse 2. Let's see, how do I operate this thing? My operator's not here today. I'm doing it all by myself. There we go. Chapter 3, verse 2. We find a third wife. Here's his list of wives. Now, of course, this list is not completely accurate because Michael is not in the list. But, of course, Michael had no children. This is a list of wives with children. We are in 2 Samuel, chapter 2, and I'm on the wrong page. Chapter 3, verse 2. Chapter 3, verse 2. And unto David were sons born in Hebron, and his firstborn was Amnon, and of Ahinoam, the Jezreelitess, and his second Chileab, of Abigail, the wife of Nabal. Well, she's not the wife of Nabal no more. The Carmelite. And the third, Absalom, the son of Makar, the daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. Now, that's a bad spot to be getting your wife from. Why is he doing that? Now, he's down in Hebron. You'd think that, you know, he's out of the way to picking up somebody from Syria. This is Syria, is where this woman's from. Her dad was the king. And her boy is the one our story will be about. Absalom. Absalom's bad news. Now, the other list, just for the fun of knowing it's there, the other list is in chapter 5. And those are the children that he got out of women in Jerusalem. The third on the list there is Nathan, probably Nathan the prophet, that ends up telling him off. But all the guys on that list are good. The end of that list of the ones from Jerusalem is Solomon. Solomon starts out good, doesn't end up that way, but it seems like David is trying to fulfill his wedding vows that demanded he have 16 wives. You know, that's what wedding vows do. They say 4 better, 4 worse, 4 richer, 4 poorer. David was an overachiever. He had about 8 wives and 10 concubines. He's got 18. I don't call that an overachiever. I call that foolish. I mean, now if we notice in the Bible, this is not something that was not revealed to David. David knew better. He didn't do better. He knew it. Now we get on to Solomon for doing this, but David was doing it too, and he knew, or we know he read the Bible. It was his meditation day and night. He saw these passages. He just figured they were not in the original Aramaic or something. He had him an English version. Look at these passages in Exodus 34. You can hold your place in 2 Samuel. We'll be back. But Exodus 34, verse 16. It says, And thou take of their daughters unto thy sons, and their daughters go a-whoring after their gods, and make thy sons go a-whoring after their gods. There was a reason for it. God wasn't just being mean. He wasn't saying, you're, how would we say it, Semitic supremacists? No. He said there's something more important than the skin color. It's the God color. If you go intermarrying, it's more than just a marriage. It's a worship service. Isn't that what marriage is anyway? The picture of Christ and the church? Okay. So he says don't do it. In Deuteronomy chapter 7, Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 3. It says, neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Talking about the heathen. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take to thy son. Okay, he made it clear. He does this a lot. You'll notice when you're reading that Old Testament, he'll say the very same thing forward and backwards and repeat it 2 or 3 times. It's like he thinks we're idiots, because we are. Joshua chapter 23. Joshua 23 verse 12. Else if you do in any wise go back and cleave unto the remnant of these nations, even these that remain among you, and shall make marriages with them, and go in unto them, and they to you, know for a certainty that the Lord your God will no more drive out any of these nations from before you. Whew. There he said, I'm not just saying don't do it. I'm saying if you do, I'm not going to be your helper anymore. Ooh, it's getting serious there. Now notice that was 3 passages from the Old Testament. Just happened to be 3. 3, that number's just going to keep popping up this whole morning. 3 passages telling him, and David saw those passages. He read he probably had those memorized. Yet he got him a whole bunch of women to marry and concubine and all that stuff. Now this one, the 3rd wife down the list, is the descendant of Talmai, the king of Geshur. That's in Syria. You know how far away Syria is? I don't know where he met this woman. I think they had an internet order you a Syrian bride thing going on. This man's daughter is not only off limits to David, she's way off limits. You've heard this. Where there's a will, there's a way. Sometimes that's true, not in a good way. And the heart wants what the heart wants. Well, unless the heart wants what God wants, it could be Bathsheba or Tamar, and the end is always death. Right. So it's important, David and everybody in our story and us as well, pay attention to what our heart is desiring. Proverbs chapter 14 verse 12. This is a verse everybody knows. Proverbs 14:12. This is a good one to memorize. You can use it on a lot of people, and before you know it, God will be using it on you. Proverbs 14:12. There is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. It didn't say there was a way that seemed wrong to a man. There's plenty of those. But he's saying the one that's going to mess you up is the one you really think is right, but you're not checking it by the book that tells you what right is. That was the problem in Judges. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. They weren't setting out to do wrong. They were setting out to do right. Just didn't pass it by the book that said what right was. Man's not qualified to figure that out. Okay, in our passage, let's go to this time 1 Samuel chapter 17. Now, the first inning of our ball game is hot and heavy, and we've seen the next guy that's going to show up with a number 3 on him is in 1 Samuel 17 verse 3. Did I tell you first? 1 Samuel 17:13. I can't read today. 1 Samuel 17:13. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to the battle. You know, this is Goliath is out there wreaking havoc. And the names of his 3 sons that went to the battle were Eliab the first, and the next unto him was Abinadab, and the third Shimei, or Shammah. Shammah on you. That's the third one. I don't know why this 3 keeps popping up, but all the way it's a number 3. Now let's see this mention show up in our passage in 2 Samuel. 2 Samuel 13, just happens to be chapter 13, verse 2. 2 Samuel 13, verse 2. And Amnon, okay, if you don't remember, he was the firstborn of David's sons. And Amnon was so vexed that he fell sick for his sister Tamar. For she was a virgin, and Amnon thought it hard for him to do anything to her. But Amnon had a friend whose name was JONADAB, the son of Shimea, whatever that is. That's the third son of Jesse, David's brother. And JONADAB was a very subtle man, just like the devil was when he showed up to Eve. Tricky. He knows what he's doing. Now notice two things. He started out saying, okay, Tamar's my sister, but she's off limits. I just can't even... He thought it hard for him to do anything to her. That's in verse 2. But then something happens in verse 3. The word but. But is a disjunctive conjunction. It's reversing something you saw before it. So the thought, I can't do anything to harm her, in verse 2, has been reversed in verse 3 by a friend. His friend is bad news. Matter of fact, this friend's going to turn on him. He sets this whole thing up, and we'll see by the end of it, his friend was no friend. The law didn't have any sacrifice for this type of a situation to cover it. And David knew that all too well. Just previous to this, Nathan had showed up and told him, you're the man. Know all about Bathsheba, buddy. Now the shoe's on the other foot. His son is involved in some wickedness. Now you'll remember one of the things that Nathan told him was you're going to repay 4 sheep for a sheep. This is sheep number 1, his firstborn son, going down. Absalom, this is his sister. Tamar's his sister. Tamar and Absalom are close. And you can tell that. Now, I guess you would be. You've got all of these put together. Well, it's kind of like what's going on today. A family with every kid has a different mom or dad. So you would just naturally click with who was really your blood brother or sister. And that's what Absalom and Tamar were. When Absalom has a son, he has 3 of them. He finally gets him a girl, and he names her for his sister, Tamar. You find 2 of them. It's an interesting study. Sometime you can build a whole sermon on it. The Tamars in the Bible. There's at least 3 of them. 2 Samuel 13, look at verse 20. And Absalom her brother said unto her, hath Amnon thy brother been with thee? But hold now thy peace, my sister. He is thy brother. Regard not this thing. So Tamar remained desolate in her brother Absalom's house. But when King David heard of these things, he was very wroth. But it did nobody any good. He got all worked up about it, but he wasn't willing to make any stand. That's tough. This right here is one of those hard spots in the Bible. There's a couple of stories that'll just make you work, and you and God try to figure out. One of them, of course, is Dinah. You know, Jacob's daughter, Dinah, that gets raped. Here's another situation. A woman gets raped. And David doesn't seem like he's really worried about it all. He's mad it happened or that it's going to come out, but he doesn't make any stand. I'd have called that boy on the carpet, and back in these days, they'd have been off with your head, but not David. Now, I understand maybe it was his firstborn. Back then, you needed a seed to sit on the throne. He got plenty of kids. Don't worry about it. He's very wroth. Now, I'm sure in Absalom's mind, this causes a problem. This is no different than everybody. God sees to it we all get this same type of situation. Your authority will not do what you see as the right thing to do. And then it's up to you to get your relationship right with God in spite of your authority not doing right. Absalom did not. He got bitter by it. And from here on out, he's coming up with a plot and a plan. And he's going to set things straight. After 2 full years, he kills Amnon. He says, I gave daddy 2 years and he's not fixed it. Time's up, buddy. I'm going to take care of it. And he does. He calls him down to the sheep shearing, and he's got an extra little shear for AMNON. He takes care of business. Look at chapter 13, 2 Samuel 13, verse 32. Remember the friend AMNON had? Here he shows up again. And JONADAB, the son of Shimei, David's brother, answered and said, Let not my lord suppose that that they have slain all the young men, the king's sons. David thought, somebody told him, look, when Absalom had that great sheep shearing party down there, they killed all the king's sons. And somebody's going to come clear things up for him. Just happens to be the friend. Now, he ought to be tore up about it. Remember, his friend just got killed? Here's what he's got to say. For AMNON only is dead. For by the appointment of Absalom, this hath been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. I had nothing to do with it. It was his plan. Matter of fact, he knows all the ins and outs of it. I think if I'd been David, I'd have been questioning him pretty closely. He doesn't show to be a very good friend. If sin brings you a friend, you don't have a friend, you got a favorite enemy. And that's what this guy's turned out to be. Absalom can't stay in town now. He just killed David's oldest son. The ground's going to get hot for a little while. So he's got to get out of town. You know where he goes? He goes to his mama's dad's. That's Syria. He gets out of town. Look at it in verse 37. Chapter 13, verse 37. But Absalom fled and went to Talmai, the son of Amminahud, king of Geshur. And David mourned for his son every day. I don't know which one he's mourning for, Absalom or AMNON. Either way, he just lost two of them. He's only recognizing one. Verse 38. So Absalom fled and went to Geshur and was there 3 years. There's that 3. 3 years he's going to stay in Syria. No doubt with a bitter attitude. And now they're not Christians up there. Now I understand I'm using the word lightly. They weren't Christians in Israel either, but they weren't serving God for sure in Syria. So he's not going to pick up any good influences up there. So he's in Syria. After 5 years of this self-exaltation and justification that no doubt he was doing, he decides it's time to get back home. Tired of Syria. But it's more than that. He's now come up with a plan. This is what happens if you can't handle when God puts an unknown in life. He'll do this all the time. He'll say, look, you can see this clearly and nobody else is seeing it and doing right, and you know it's right, and they're just ignoring it. And then you got to depend on him. And if you don't depend on him, you get bitter. He says that root of bitterness will grow and many people get defiled by it. That's exactly what Absalom is about to do. He's going to defile as many as he can. Look at chapter 14. Absalom is going to call in some help. Now, who he calls on, you got to really wonder about anybody who's friends with him. But he's calling on somebody who shouldn't have any time for him. Chapter 14, verse 23. So Joab arose and went to Geshur and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. Look at it on a map somewhere. I got one right here. Geshur is up here in Syria. Damascus is right up there south of Mount Ararat. So, and then Jerusalem is right here. Look, they're traveling this far to go get this boy. All you find Joab doing in the Bible is one battle after the next. When's he got time for this errand? To go help you know, the favorite son or whatever he is. But he does. Look at it in verse 24. He's worked a deal with David. And the king said, "Let him turn to his own house, and let him not see my face." So Absalom returned to his own house and saw not the king's face. I don't know if Joab thinks he's just getting this guy off of his back. You know, he's been bugging him for 5 years now, and, you know, I'll just do this one thing, and then he'll be back in town, and the king will deal with him, and I won't have to mess with it again. But we're going to find out it doesn't work that way. This guy lives in Jerusalem for 2 years. In verse 28 it says, "So Absalom dwelt 2 full years in Jerusalem and saw not the king's face." There's a reason for that. David knew the guy hadn't repented. There's a point in time where you don't open your arms up and just accept everybody. If sin has not been confronted, it has to be confronted.
Amen.
Otherwise, you're condoning it by tolerating it. Can't be. Absalom here is going to get livid. He's a hothead. And his new press officer, Joab, has not been returning his phone calls. And so his third phone call, it just happens to be 3 again, he makes with some fire. He sets Joab's field on fire. Well, that encourages him to pick up the phone. And so then he goes back to the king and says, you've got to get this thing figured out. Now the first thing he does is he engineers some wise woman of Tekoa to go in there and give a parable to the king. I mean, really elaborate stuff. How about just go... David's a plain talking man. You thought Joab was, but obviously he wasn't. Why wouldn't you just go in there and tell the king, "Hey, your boy is bugging me to death. Go down there and talk to him." That's what he wanted the whole time. Well, he finally gets it in chapter 14, verse 30. Chapter 14, 30 is him setting the field on fire. But look at this. He says, "See, Joab's field is near mine." Wonder why he moved next door to Joab. He was planning on bugging him the whole time. You're going to have people like that. They think it's their life goal to nitpick and bug you. Just be straight with them. Don't do a Joab. Joab concocted all of these things to appease. Just be real. I mean, plain speech. That's how we're understood biblically. Absalom views Joab now as his savior. Now, it's not 100% savior, but it's the way most Christians in the world view the savior. They view him as a genie in a bottle. That's the way that Absalom is doing it. I'll come up with the plan, Joab. You just do as I tell you. And that's what he was doing. His philosophy is this: the end justifies the means. Now, lots of people think that. And those who say that don't mean that, because they're not at the end when they say it. What they usually mean is this: my projected end justifies my unjust means. The way I see it going down, this will be good in the end, therefore it justifies me doing this. But they've not reached the end yet. Now, we learn from this story that mercy on an offender seldom is repaid by reform of the offender. That's why we have an Old Testament. You know what it says? You do wrong, God's coming down on it. Because if he just forgives and forgets, you know what we'll do? We'll take advantage of it. And that's exactly what our story is showing. David has now come to Absalom. He's kissing on Absalom. He's accepting Absalom. Rather than make Absalom admit what he did and what's going on. So Absalom's seen he's willing to move this far. I've pushed him this far and this far. That's what these offenders do. if you don't make them confront the offense, they think it's their turn to keep pushing because you're willing to move. Look at it in chapter 15, 2 Samuel 15, verse 8. They're into story time now. He says, this is Absalom speaking to his dad. For thy servant vowed a vow while I abode in Geshur in Syria, saying, if the Lord shall bring me again indeed to Jerusalem. But it wasn't the Lord, was it? It was his concocted plan, and he got the Pony Express with Joab. I don't think God had anything to do with any of that. But anyway, this is the story he knows his dad will like. He says, then I will serve the Lord. Well, we find that to be a lie in just a minute. Verse 9. And the king said unto him, go in peace. So he arose and went to Hebron. Now, where do you do sacrifices in Israel at this time? He's in this perfect spot to do it. Jerusalem. Hello. Isn't that where the tabernacle is? The temple? Yeah. Well, now he's from Hebron. So maybe that makes sense to David. He's going back to his hometown to, made a special vow to God. I don't think so, though. You know what Hebron was? It's a city of refuge. So he's back in town. It's common knowledge that he was the one who knocked out AMNON. So before he makes his next move, he's going to make sure he's in a safe place. He goes down to the city of refuge. And from there, according to verse 10, he sends spies out and propaganda agents. And they're all going to declare, Absalom's reigning in Hebron. No, he's not. He's just telling everybody he is. He will be if you accept it. Absalom's unseen queen of success now is going to whisper some sweet nothings in his ear. The flesh will lie to us so fast. And he's believing his own lies. He's going to get him two counselors. One of them is going to tell him the truth. But the truth isn't appealing. And when the truth doesn't rub him right, he throws that one out and chooses his own hurt. Look at 2 Samuel chapter 18. David is on the run. He's scared off a mighty man. David was nobody to trifle with. I wouldn't want to see David in battle. Or I wouldn't probably want to see any of them in those ancient times in battle. They were brutal. But here, David is bad news bear. But yet, Absalom's got him running. So he does this. He says, look, we're going to be on the run here. Here's what we need to do. I'm going to split this army, just so happens, into three. Oh, I've not been giving you all my slides. Oh, well. I usually got a guy who does it for me. But so he says, instead of just sitting as a sitting duck in one spot, we're going to split it up. There's going to be three of us. And Joab, you take 1/3 of the army. And so he does that. Look at it. Look at it in chapter 18, verse 14. Just so happens, the third section of the army that runs into Absalom happens to be Joab. Now, think about it. This guy's been doing Joab wrong and using him and manipulating him for at least 5 years. Now, all of a sudden, they're showing up on the playing field together. And it's obvious they ain't on the same team. I think about this and I think, why did not Absalom call Joab? He's been using him this whole time. Why didn't he call him and say, I need you to come be my general? I think he probably would have. He's been kowtowing to everything he said so far. But this one's of the Lord. They meet up together and he's got 3 special darts for him. 2 Samuel 18, verse 14. Then said Joab, I may not tarry. I'm not going to sit around and talk about this. Thus with thee. And he took 3 darts in his hand, And he thrust them through the heart of Absalom while he was yet alive in the midst of the oak. He's done. Now, we got to take careful consideration, knowing the things in the Old Testament are written for our example. Okay, what example does God intend us to take? God will tell you. I'm just going to suggest a couple. Jeremiah 25. Jeremiah 25, verse 7. Jeremiah 25, verse 7. God speaking here. He says, "Ye have not hearkened unto me, saith the Lord, that ye might provoke me to anger with the works of your hands, to your own hurt." So he said right there, first thing that he says in our list is, you've not listened to me. You know, we can read the Bible without listening to it. A lot of times we do. When we read the Bible, it's important to make application. God, what's that mean to me? What are you telling me? Now, sometimes, you know, God knows how to communicate to us on whatever mental level we are. We all have different things that we're interested in. God knows that, and His Word is already prepared for it. If your focus is doctrine, He'll pull you out some doctrine. If your focus is personal application or, you know, those things, He'll pull them out for you. But then He'll grow you so that you learn a little bit of something that you wasn't comfortable with before. We got to be sure we're paying attention to it. He says here, these people have not hearkened to Him. And he said, when you don't listen to God, you do the next thing. The works of your hands, that was what was wicked. And he said, what you're doing is to your own hurt. So exactly like America is going right now. You can manipulate your body to become any gender or variation of a gender that you choose. Believe it or not, that's not convenient. And it's not for your good, it's to your own hurt. That's exactly what we've got right here. He says, when you don't listen to me, you end up hurting yourself. That's a fact. Look at Proverbs chapter 8. Proverbs 8, verse 36. This is just a basic, simple thing right here that we all know. We just don't like to apply it. Proverbs 8, verse 36. God talking again. But he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death. Whew. You know what he's identified loving death as? Sinning against God. You don't have to set out by saying, I love death. All you have to do is sin. That is loving death. So, we all got to fight sin. We never accomplish that job. We just keep on fighting it, hopefully. But if you decide you're going to give up on the fight, just notice it. It's loving death. It's to your own hurt. Every individual is accountable individually to God. That's what Absalom never could get a hold of. He figured, hey, Daddy can marry this pagan woman. You know, God's not striking him down dead. Well, he was doing a lot more right things than he was wrong things. And he just wants to use the excuse he can get away with. And that's what people will do, and we will too. Fact of the matter is, everybody has to give account to God for themselves. He says in Romans, so then every one of us shall give account of himself to God. We're going to give account for the actions we take. And we're also going to give account for what we love and what we hate.